Hello, I'm David Barlow. I'm a car accident lawyer here in Hawaii, and today we're going to discuss how much is my Hawaii injury case worth. This information is found on our webpage. You just click on the free advice section and you'll see a whole list of web pages that answers many of your questions when you've been involved in an accident. So today is how much is my Hawaii injury case worth? As you can imagine, that is a question that we get very often, frequently. It's understandable, that people want to know what they can expect as far as future planning or have you. So I've compiled a list of 5 factors for you to take into account when considering how much your case is worth. All right, the first factor is, was the other driver liable for the accident? That's more of a question of, is your case worth anything or not? So obviously the other driver does need to be at fault for the accident for you to get compensation. Now, there is a lot of confusion in Hawaii because Hawaii is known as a no-fault state. Because we have no fault insurance. I won't go into that on this page because that's a whole nother topic in and of itself. Basically, that just refers to the $10,000 in medical bills that is paid no matter whose fault the accident is. But when it comes to settlements for your injuries, the fault of the accident is absolutely essential to determine that. And part of that is if there's a percentage at fault. For example, if the insurance company determines that you were 30% at fault, then they're going to reduce the value of the case by 30%. Now, obviously, most rear-end accidents are 100% the other driver's fault. These percentage of faults really just come into play if there's like changing lanes or sometimes accidents at intersections, things like that. But almost always it's 100% at fault, at least the cases we take, because we want to take cases that we know we're going to get compensation for our clients. Second factor is, how serious were your injuries? This is probably the biggest factor. If you're talking about compensation for injuries, it matters if your injuries were serious or not. It goes without saying that if you have a whiplash injury that heals in a few days, you're not going to deserve as much as a whiplash injury that takes a few months to heal, or as much as a broken bone that takes 6 months to heal, or a surgery that takes a lot to heal, as well as a lot of rehabilitation time. So how serious your injuries is a really big factor. So clients really need to be reasonable. If their injuries were not that serious, they really have to be reasonable with how much they expect. If they're not, then that's when cases don't settle, because insurance adjusters, they're not going to give you a settlement that is compensating you based on a broken bone when all you had was a whiplash or a sore back for a few days. So you really have to be reasonable if your injuries were not very serious. Third factor is, how much damage was there to your vehicle? That is a big factor as well. It's kind of obvious that if there's a whole lot of damage, the car rolled over, got just totally destroyed, anyone, a jury, insurance adjusters, are going to assume somebody was more seriously injured in that accident than a very minor rear-end accident. All right, now that doesn't mean that it's always the biggest factor. Sometimes I've had clients with really serious injuries and very minor accidents. Some are just kind of freak accidents. I had one where a client was just holding onto a steering wheel really tightly. Another car hit his wheel and actually forced the steering wheel to just turn really quickly, and it basically tore his elbow, and all the ligaments and everything, tore everything right out, and there's hardly any damage to the car. So there are going to be some situations where there's very minor damage with serious injuries, but those are more the exception than the rule, for sure. Fourth factor is how much treatment did you receive? This is a really big factor, and this is something that you have control over, right? If you are seriously injured, you need to get as much treatment as you can. Definitely, you should be going to the emergency room. You should be getting follow-up treatment with your doctor and follow-up rehabilitation, physical therapy, massage therapy, all sorts of follow-up treatment. That's a huge factor that insurance companies look at. Basically, if you don't get treatment, they assume you were not injured. So it's really your obligation, if you're injured and with serious injuries especially, to get as much treatment as you can. That's your evidence in a personal injury case. Is the evidence is the medical bills. So you really need to get a lot of treatment. Fifth factor is how much are your medical bills? This is also a big factor. I hate to keep saying that, but that's really something that insurance adjusters look at because quite simply they can't offer you a settlement for less than your medical bills. That's just a no-brainer. That's just kind of the bottom line is what are the medical bills, especially when people use up to $10,000 in no-fault insurance. Anything over that, of course, they can't offer you a settlement that's not going to pay your medical bills because nobody would accept that settlement offer if at the minimum they're going to have bills to pay. So that's a really big factor. So in general, the more medical bills there are, the bigger the settlement. So that's something to keep in mind when you're thinking about not getting treatment or not because you're too busy or you don't think it's necessary. Just keep that in mind. The more medical bills I have, usually the higher the settlement I get. Sixth factor is how much wage loss did you have? Wage loss is also a pretty straightforward thing. If you couldn't work because of your injuries, then you're entitled to compensation for that missed work. That's just pretty basic, obvious stuff. Now, at the same time, wage loss can also be a difficult part of the case because not everyone has really good documentation for wage loss. I get a lot of, I was applying for a job. I would have started a job next week, but I got in an accident. Or I was going to start working overtime next week, but I got in an accident. Things like that are really, really hard. The best wage loss claims is you're working with a steady job. You have a couple months of pay stubs that we can send before the accident. And then we show, January, February, he made this much money. March, April, May, he couldn't work because of his injuries. The doctor notes back that up. You need medical documentation to prove that you couldn't work, not just, I didn't feel like it because I got in an accident. All right, you need that proof that you have injuries and can't work. So say March, April, May, you can't work. So, you get compensation for those 3 months. And then June, July, August, going forward, you have pay stubs again showing how much you make. So you got before and after proving this is what you make, and then the middle part showing, that's obvious. He would have made that amount. So as long as you have good documentation like that, then wage loss is pretty straightforward as well. Seventh factor is which insurance company is involved. I've said these are big factors on pretty much all factors, but this is also a big part of it because quite frankly, we see different settlement amounts for all the different insurance companies. There is a web page that talks about which insurance companies are better than others. Feel free to go to that one on my website. And I do need to update that one a little bit because it seems like insurance companies are always kind of changing their strategies and their procedures. So sometimes those change a little bit, but in general, you can go and see that list of the best to worst insurance companies. But it is a big factor because some companies are very reasonable and generous and don't like to go to court. Other insurance companies are just very unreasonable. They try to offer the absolute minimum that they think will get it settled. And if it doesn't, then they have a whole lot of cheap lawyers that are ready to defend the case in court for years. So every insurance company kind of has their own philosophy and way to deal with these claims. So that is a big factor because that makes a big difference. And it's frustrating for clients, especially if they know friends that got big settlements with another insurance company, and I have to tell them, oh, sorry, Geico, State Farm, Farmers, they're the cheaper ones, and you just got the bad luck to be with the cheaper one. And it doesn't make sense, right? Like, your injury should be worth the same no matter what insurance company is involved. But sadly, it is a big part of the value of a case. Anyway, I hope this was helpful to you. Especially even current clients could review this because these are big factors that they should keep in mind. Hopefully, it keeps them reasonable as well. Settlements happen when insurance companies are reasonable and clients are reasonable. That's when they come together and they get a settlement. All right. If insurance companies being very unreasonable or clients being very unreasonable the other way, settlements don't happen. So we try to get insurance companies to be reasonable, clients be reasonable, and we can get it settled, and you can get compensation without spending years going to court. And that's usually the best thing for everybody involved. Okay, any other questions, feel free to give me a call, fill out the contact form at the bottom of our webpage. We'll be happy to discuss your case, and if you want us to help you out to get you the compensation you deserve, we'll be more than happy to do that. All right, thank you, and have a great day.